Welcome everyone to Brighteon Conversations. I'm Mike Adams, the founder of Brighteon. Today we have an extraordinary guest. This is one of the most anticipated interviews that I've been looking forward to in a long time. His name is John Moore, and his website is thelibertyman.com, spelled just like it sounds, thelibertyman.com. And he's a radio host, he's an investigator. His resume is extraordinary. He's been an investigator with law enforcement, I think a homicide investigator as well, and many other things, in military background as well. Just an extraordinary, high IQ, patriotic individual who I've been looking forward to talking with for a long time. And today we have a topic that's going to blow your mind. It's about asteroids, Planet X, things that might be happening in the near future. John Moore, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on, sir.
Thank you, Mike. It's an honor to be here. Appreciate it.
Well, your work is extraordinary, and I just want to remind people, you got a radio show Monday through Friday, 7 to 10 a.m. Central Time with Republic Broadcasting. They can get the links to listen to that on your website, thelibertyman.com. How about a little brief bio there, John, just since this is the first time we've talked, for my listeners.
That's fine. As I sometimes say, Mike, U.S. Military Intelligence School in 1967 took my pile of mush, pretty useless brain, and turned it into something useful. I turned into a research tool as an intelligence analyst. I got to Vietnam 2 weeks after my 20th birthday, where I was assigned as an intelligence analyst in psychological warfare. Did my tour there, which included flying 57 combat missions and surviving the Tet Offensive of 1968. Returned to the States, I was assigned to the Special Forces, the 6th Special Forces Group at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where once again I was an intelligence analyst, and I was put on alert to invade the Middle East twice. Luckily, that did not happen. We all pretty much knew it would be a one-way ticket. Left the Army, became a paralegal. I did that work for not very long, less than a year, when I was recruited to become a homicide detective for the state of Missouri, the public defender system. Worked my first homicide September 1973, get these years right, a double homicide. I was 25 years old, and many homicides between then and more recently. I became a radio talk show host part-time, a couple hours a week, beginning in 1995. It's become my full-time career now, for 8 or 10 years. And quite frankly, Mike, I'd rather be a radio talk show host than a homicide detective. I've done both, and I can sleep better at night, knowing that when I disconnect from the radio show, it's over for the day. When you're a homicide detective, it's never over until the case is finished. So that's a good thing. I'm the father of a woman who has 3 children, and my wife died about a year ago, so I'm a single guy. And I have hobbies. I'm not just a radio talk show host. I have a motorcycle, a British sports car. I just enjoy life. And quite frankly, Mike, I'd rather enjoy life than go through another war or go through really big rocks hitting planet Earth. But these things will probably happen, unfortunately, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Well, I'd like to ask you about both of those things, and it's just an extraordinary history that you've laid out for us there. Just great respect for you and what you've sacrificed and put in terms of effort and time for this nation and to help the innocent. I just want to put that out there. If we had more people like you in this country, we wouldn't be in the sad state that we're in right now, facing civil war. I just gotta say that.
Well, Mike, when I was laying on my belly during the Tet Offensive, I do what many soldiers do. I attempted to make a deal with God. And I was only 6 months past my 20th birthday when I was in the Tet Offensive, pretty young guy. And I said, God, if you get me through this, I promise I'll do important things that have important consequences with my life. I don't know what it's going to be, but I promise you I will do that.
And you have, indeed. And
I have, indeed. And I continue
yet to come.
And I continue to.
Exactly.
Well, why don't we just jump right into the topic at hand?
All right, sure. Well, I kind of wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, just to give us your thoughts on, do you think we're headed for civil war first? And then let's get into the Planet X topic. But, Trump saying a couple of days ago he's going to disappear for a while. A lot of concern that things are about to erupt in America. Just your thoughts on that very quickly, sir.
Well, a brief statement like that, in the absence of something more detailed, is endless speculation, and that's all it's going to be. Is he going to Camp David? Is he going to Cheyenne Mountain? Is he going to Tahiti with his beautiful wife? I don't know. And we need more facts before we just have the endless speculation. And let's just move on from there. What else did you want to discuss real quick, Mike?
Well, the whole Civil War scenario with the Portland
Civil War scenario,
mayor.
yes, the Civil War. Well, first of all, I wrote an article at my website about the coming Civil War. Since I wrote that, which the facts haven't changed, but I've segued into calling it more communist insurrection, which is, I think, more accurate. And the terms are basically synonyms, Civil War or communist insurrection. But we're seeing full-blown, in my opinion, communist insurrection that's got started with a great sincerity up in the metro Portland, Oregon area. More in the last 2 nights, they've moved away from downtown to the outlying areas, at least 6 miles from where all that mess was taking place for 2 months. And they've got the resources, they got the people, the training and the equipment to do this in multiple cities, Mike. And I think that what's going on in Portland, and to a certain extent in Seattle, is beta testing to refine their tactics, refine their training, so that when they go in other cities, they'll be better at what they're doing. We have to give credit where credit is due. These people are well trained, well equipped, and well funded. Of course, it takes a lot of money to pull something like this off, and there's a lot of money behind it. The evidence seems to be George Soros money. They're creative, they're tough, they're nothing. We cannot and should not take them lightly. Never underestimate your enemy. Never. We made a mistake doing it in Vietnam for quite a while, but underestimating your enemy is a massive mistake, no matter what conflict you're in. So it looks like no matter who's elected, President Trump is reelected. If he's not reelected, we're in for massive civil disorder, civil war, communist insurrection. I'm using all 3 terms as synonyms. That seems to be unavoidable, Mike.
Well, you lived through the Tet Offensive of history, and some people have described this communist insurrection as perhaps a Tet Offensive in America.
Well, Dave Hodges is doing that, yeah, and it brings up a mental image into people who were alive as adults during that time, and people who've looked at a little bit of history. I had a different experience during Tet Offensive than most, because I was assigned to military intelligence and psychological warfare. Within 2 weeks of getting in Vietnam, I got there the first week of September. Within 2 weeks, I knew there was going to be a Tet Offensive as an intelligence analyst. And all that fall, I'm telling my buddies who were not in intelligence, there was only about 4 of us in the intelligence section. I'm telling my buddies, guys, there's this thing called the Chinese New Year. It's called Tet, T-E-T, the Chinese New Year. It's a combination of Christmas and New Year's and the 4th of July. Christmas because they exchange gifts, New Year's because they shoot off fireworks, and 4th of July, same thing, more fireworks. And that's tradition. It's a traditional Chinese celebration. I said, guys, they're going to hit us. They're going to hit us hard. And I started telling my buddies in September, I said, you get that fruitcake, that disgusting fruitcake from your parents, don't throw it away. Keep it. If you can get extra ammo, you get the extra ammo. And a few guys paid heed. Most were trapped in what is now called normalcy bias, and they didn't do much. But the guys that paid heed, they had extra ammo, they had extra food, and we did okay. So that my experience was different than most. And we found out, I think it was an ABC documentary, where General Westmoreland ended up suing the network because of the content of that documentary, which showed the conflict between the CIA's intelligence, which I was getting every day, by the way, and the U.S. Army's intelligence, which was denying that there was going to be a Tet Offensive. The CIA was saying, hey guys, it's coming, better get ready. And of course, the Army went with the Army's intelligence instead of the CIA's intelligence. And there was a lawsuit over that. I don't recall the outcome of it, but Westmoreland did file that lawsuit back then. That was in the 80s.
Yeah, that was, historically, I think, often described as an intelligence failure, so to speak. But as you're describing, it really wasn't a failure. The intelligence was known. It was just ignored by certain people.
I could have made a direct transferred from military intelligence to the CIA when I was leaving the Army as an intelligence analyst with the CIA. And I did not do so for mainly two reasons. One, they wouldn't pay me as much as I made when I was an 18-year-old just out of high school, which was $100 a week, if you can believe that. And two, I knew that no matter how good the work I did was as an intelligence analyst, how truthful it was, how accurate it was, it wouldn't be paid attention to. And I knew that as a 22-year-old. So
Wow.
I declined going to work for the CIA. I didn't want to live and share an apartment with four other men and ride a bicycle to work every day, eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, trying to keep the lights on, which is what a GS5 rating would have been in 1970. So I declined on that.
Well, let's fast forward now, where there's intelligence out there about an approaching possible planet or large body, large mass in our solar system, Planet X, as it's sometimes called. And this is what turned me on to reach out to you here and invite you, because you did a fantastic interview with another broadcaster about Planet X. And as you believe, the United States government has known for decades that there will
41
be
years.
41 years, that there would be asteroids, meteors striking the Earth, and maybe other dramatic effects caused by this planet passing through the Earth orbit of our solar system. So how about a brief intro on that?
There's something called the word synchronicity, Mike. And it was late winter, early spring of 2000, 20 years ago. Synchronicity kicked in over a period of about 6 months. First, I was approached by two friends. They were independent researchers. One didn't know the other was going to approach me. And they started telling me about these events that would happen in the future. 200-mile-an-hour winds for a day, really big rocks hitting the Earth, massive worldwide flooding, at least 3 9-point-plus earthquakes on a new matter seismic zone. I listened patiently, and I thought I didn't say anything to these guys, but I thought, man, you guys need tinfoil hats really bad. But I listened to them. So I took that information, went to a friend of mine who's an outside vendor for several lettered agencies, and I said, this is what I found out. And he says, John, I never heard of this, but out of respect for you, I'll check it out and get back with you. So he gets back with me about a month later. He tells me, yes, it is real. And the government found out about it, they verified it. They've been wondering about this thing since about 1900. They noticed what's called perturbations in the outer planets, Pluto and Uranus and so forth, when they got to a certain point in their orbit around the sun. And they sent the Pioneer 10 space probe looking for this thing, and they found it in 1979. And they've been observing it and tracking it ever since. Now, another part of the synchronicity is the fact that I teach Missouri concealed carry training so people can get permits to carry concealed pistols in Missouri. And I also have a lot of friends. Over the decades, I've developed a lot of friends. One of them at the time in the summer of 2000 was a college professor. And before that, I had lunch with a buddy of mine, a buddy I served with in Special Forces who was also a Navy SEAL. And during that conversation, I was telling him about the effects of Planet X that I was learning about. Then spontaneously, he mentions a classified briefing he was in 1985. And he was told at that briefing the following: gentlemen, during your lifetimes, these oceans will come out of their basins, flooding all coastal areas worldwide. And when it comes time to retire from the Navy, you just might want to retire to one of the known safe havens, the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks, because of the rising ocean levels. They were also told that the country would be split in two, north-south at the Mississippi River Valley, and that the weight of the water would generate 3 9-point-plus earthquakes in a new Madrid seismic zone. It was only about 3 or 4 weeks later, a college professor friend of mine asked me to do a presentation at a geopolitical class, college class. I agreed to do so. He didn't tell me there'd be another presenter there. The other presenter was a retired intelligence officer from one of the services. I won't reveal which one. I need to protect his identity. So after the presentation, we go to a pizza place in Rolla, Missouri. It's a 4-top table. The intelligence officer is directly across from me. His wife's next to me. My friend, a college professor, across from me. I found out during our dinner that he did a 3-year tour of duty with us in the U.S. Submarine Corps. So I knew I had to ask the question. I never met this guy before, may never see him again. Tell me what you know about rising ocean levels. Before he can speak up, his wife sitting next to me speaks up. She says, John, we're at our last duty assignment at the Pentagon. We're getting ready to retire. We need to pick a place to retire. We picked the Arkansas, Missouri Ozarks because of rising ocean levels. I immediately made an appointment to meet him at the Steak and Shake restaurant the following week. And he made the second revisions on the map that I began with my buddy. Synchronicity kicked in again. Only about 3 or 4 weeks later, I decided to start asking all my pistol students who was a veteran. Well, it turned out this next pistol class, I had a retired submarine officer. Same thing. He was at the classified briefing. He made the third and final revisions on the map that's at my website at thelibertyman.com. And by the way, people need to put that in their browser, not in a search engine, because you'll end up 20 different places if you put it in a search engine.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to remind our producer, put that map on screen. There's a map of the United States, split down the middle. The oceans covering a lot of coastal areas. Florida is gone in that map. Put that map on screen. And then also, to the listeners, you got to type in, people need to remember how to use browsers. You type in thelibertyman.com in the URL on top. Everybody keeps going through Google and Facebook. They think that's the internet. That's not the internet.
No. And I know I'm trying to save myself some work here. I'm going to get emails from all over the planet because of this show. John, what's going to happen in Australia? John, what's going to happen in New Zealand? And here's what you do, ladies and gentlemen. You do use Google Earth. That's a nice service. And you can put in 300 feet new elevation of the oceans, or 400. The Navy says 300 to 400. It will be the new ocean levels. I recommend 600 just to be safe. But you can do that for England, any coastal area worldwide, to find out what the new ocean level will be for any location you choose.
Well,
hopefully save myself some work there, Mike. When I get
that's true. You can adjust the like a slider. You can see, but the United Kingdom would be devastated. London.
And there's some critical things that, once again, using a search, these search engines can be wonderful. You can find that the CIA, using the search, moved most of their men and everything from Langley, Virginia to Denver. The press release, the first press release, even their own people were laughing at. They said, we're moving these people to break up the good old boy network that's been in place for so many decades. Now they just say for operational reasons. National Security Agency, which has been at Fort Meade, Maryland forever, here's their press release. Now, Mike, you probably know, most of our listeners know, that electricity is a commodity that's bought and sold across the country, just like loaves of bread or automobiles or any other commodity. The press release said, we can't get enough electricity at Fort Meade, so we're moving to Utah to build a new computer complex. So they're in Utah, they're in Denver, they're in Atlanta, and I'm sure other places. Now, Mike, you're a scientist, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here. If you're going to be messing around professionally in a laboratory with really fun things like, well, let's say foot and mouth disease and anthrax, would it be smart to maybe buy a 300-acre island, maybe 100 miles off the coast of Connecticut? Would that be a smart thing to do?
Yeah, sure. You'd want isolation, right?
And what island is that? If you know, I'll tell you.
I don't know the name of that island.
Plum Island.
Ah, okay.
Plum Island.
There we go.
Bought around the end of World War II, give or take, so they could safely work on anthrax and foot and mouth disease and Lord knows what. It's all kinds of things that can kill people and kill animals.
Lyme's disease, weaponization, things like that.
And Lyme disease probably came from there. That's a different story. Now, if you look at, once again, Google Earth, it's basically like flying an airplane. You can see Plum Island looks like a 300-acre golf course. It's beautiful. It has about 8 or 10 buildings on it. Their press release says we ran out of space. So we have to move where? They moved it to the worst possible place you can imagine, in the middle of the most productive agriculture real estate on the planet, Manhattan, Kansas.
Wow.
That's where they moved all that really fun stuff where they work on foot and mouth disease, anthrax, and as I say, Lord knows what kind of deadly viruses and diseases. So those are things that anybody can find, and the public explanations, the public press releases don't make any sense. They simply don't. Now, we have a lot of Christians that listen to this broadcast, and there's something called the Vatican. which has been in business for about 1,700 years, give or take. They took over a lot of old Roman courts and court buildings and so forth. I think the St. Peter's Basilica is a former Roman court, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, they have a library, the Vatican Library. It is most likely the largest library of ancient documents on the planet. If there's another one larger, I'm not aware of it. It's been open every working day for we don't know how many centuries, at least 10 centuries, maybe 8 or maybe 14 or 15 centuries. Until about 10 years ago, it was closed. They closed the Vatican Library, and they said for the following reason, so we could do remodeling. Maybe they did do remodeling, but my belief, and now Rome is about 80 feet above sea level. It's not all that close to the ocean, but it is about 80 feet above sea level. My belief is that what they did during that closure was duplicate everything so they could remove it to one or more remote, safe locations, possibly the Swiss Alps, possibly the Rocky Mountains, either Canada or the United States, so that those priceless collections would not be lost.
I've got so many questions for you here on all of this. Can I go for that?
Please go. Let's go.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No, number one, the rising of the ocean levels. Now, I understand that when meteors hit the planet, let's say it strikes the Atlantic Ocean, of course, there's going to be a massive tidal wave, or not tidal, but I mean a massive tsunami hitting every coastal city.
Okay, we're Americans. We don't need to use Japanese. It's a tidal wave. Yeah,
yeah, right. Okay.
Well, I never heard the word tsunami. I'm 72 years old. I never heard that word until about 25 years ago.
Is that right?
Tidal wave, but go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I know that that's going to inundate the coastal areas, but what accounts for the permanent rise in ocean levels rising?
That's a great question and deserves a great answer. Now, I mentioned 3 men that were at the classified briefings. I didn't mention I've interviewed about 24 of these men. They were all at the classified briefing. None of them were told how it would happen or why. They were just told that it would happen. So I had to put on my research hat and figure it out. Initially, I thought, well, melting ice at the Antarctic, well, ice can't melt that fast. It's going to happen. And the Navy veterans were told over a 30-day period of time, ice can't melt that fast.
That's right. That's right. It's
melting ice in Greenland, well, it's not enough there, and it wouldn't happen that fast. Melting ice at the North Pole is floating seawater, so it wouldn't change the ocean levels at all. But here's what will happen, Mike. First of all, sea level is measured at Cornwall, England. Now, Cornwall, England is just about as close to the North Pole as Moscow. It's really far north. At the time that we're looking at 200 plus years ago, England was kind of ruling the seas. They took a big rock at the edge of the ocean. They probably went halfway between high tide and low tide, and they made a horizontal line, and they said, this is sea level. Makes sense. When you get to the equator, which is a number, I don't know how many thousands, but quite a few thousand miles from Cornwall, England, you find that sea level there is just about really close to 500 feet above that line at Cornwall, England. Now that bulge of water all around the equator is hundreds of thousands of cubic miles of water held in place by 2 things. Now, when you're a boy, most boys will take a bucket of water when they're 8 or 10 years old, full bucket of water, and swing it in a circle over their head, and the water doesn't come out. The same thing applies to Earth. The bulge of water is held in place by 2 things, the rotation of the Earth and gravity. Anything that disrupts the rotation of the Earth is going to disrupt the bulge of water. Now, I ask people the following question, and I'll ask you, Mike, you're a scientist, you probably know this. How many North Poles are there?
Well, of course, there's a magnetic, and then there's an axial North Pole.
Or axial or true north, same thing, synonyms. There's magnetic north, and there's true north, or the point at which the Earth rotates.
And the magnetic keeps moving.
Well, it does. And at some point they come together. And that's what we fear. When magnetic north catches, or I should back up a bit, when true north catches up with magnetic north, that's the pole shift we're concerned about. There was a news item about 10 years ago. I think that the Tampa, Florida airport was repainting the numbers on the runways because magnetic north had moved far enough that they needed to do that. These numbers on the end of the runways indicate the magnetic compass heading. That's what those numbers mean.
Yeah.
And that's been going on for about 3,600 years, and there's some disagreement about how long this cycle is, but 3,600 years is a fine number for a number of reasons. So for 3,600 years, it may be 4,200, maybe 5,000, but for a period of time, magnetic north moves away from true north. And for this period of time, it's been moving towards Siberia. What we're concerned about is the 72 hours. It could be 12 hours or 24 or 72 hours that magnetic north and true north once again come together. That will be the pole shift. That's what's going to disrupt that bulge of water at the equator. We will get a new equator, we will get new ocean levels, and it will be holy hell.
Now, would this be initiated then by the gravitational pull of Planet X approaching Earth?
As far as we know, yes, sir. That would be the reason, right?
Or could it also be set off by large rocks from space impacting with Earth's crust?
I doubt it. The rocks have to be, if they were that large, they'd probably destroy the planet. This is a really big rock we live on.
And so then the government is aware that the time of the return of Planet X is imminent. Is that the information that you're?
Let's look at some of the practical logistical things. Say you've got a company, Mike, with 5,000 men that work for you. They have 5,000 offices, cubicles with computers and telephones. They got 5,000 homes with wives and children. And you decide you're going to move them 1,000 miles away. What does that mean? You have to duplicate, before you move these 5,000 men and women, you have to duplicate everything you've got at your home base before you move to the new home base. A new building, all new workspaces, offices, cubicles, computers, telephones. You have to make arrangements for 5,000 men and women to sell their homes and buy new homes. Are you going to do that unless you have no choice?
No. You're gonna do it as a last resort.
Because you have no choice. Yeah. If it was going to happen 30 years in the future, all these people are going to be retired. Would you do it? No. You do it when it's fairly close and when you have no choice. And when the CIA and NSA did that, they did it because they had no choice. And you're going to lose some of your best people. The best people in the organization are going to be within 5 to 10 years of retiring and probably eligible to retire already. And they're going to say, the hell with you and your company. I'm out of here. You're going to lose your best
if they get word. So they're going to prevent the public, obviously, from learning about this until when? At the point where people can see it in the sky?
I had to think of, 3 years ago, last month, 3 years ago, July, I was awarded the Prague Peace Prize in Prague, Czech Republic about this work. So I'm talking to the sponsor, who, by the way, is a personal family friend of the Nobel family. That's where she got the idea for the Prague Peace Prize. And she asked me, she says, John, what did you think when you found out about this and you found out the government was not going to notify people? And I said, well, doctor, I was very upset. I was very sad that the government was not going to notify people about what's going to happen. And I felt that way for quite a few years until I looked at it more closely and thought about it in greater detail. When I came to the conclusion, the following, Mike: the safe areas, which include the Arkansas, Missouri, Ozarks, and a couple other places, there's no housing support system for 330 million people, and there's not going to be.
No.
It's simply not going to happen. So you're left, if you're in charge, you're left with two choices. You let people live a somewhat normal life and have employment, start families, have children, and live their lives, or you warn them ahead of time and cause needless suffering, needless pain, and advanced death of people who are going to die anyway. That's the two choices. As hard as they are, that there's no third choice. That third choice doesn't exist. So unfortunately, right. What about what?
I'm sorry. Well, what about the theory that these COVID lockdowns, which have been really weaponized and pushed aggressively, are in fact, I mean, this is a theory that's out there, that we're being locked down for something else, not COVID-19, like
you
something else.
There's an article, a 19-page article I wrote in 2006 at my free download my paper at my website at thelibertyman.com. It's titled "No Need for Panic," which is a direct quote, by the way, from my government insider. And there, it's on page 2 or page 3, discussing How can we get people to stay in their homes voluntarily without being forced to? And I state in my paper that a biological virus disease of some sort would give people the impression that if they remain in their homes, they would be safe, and it won't take the government forcing them to stay there. They'll be doing it on their own. And so I wrote that in 2006. It began as a private communication for my kid brother and my brother-in-law, knowing two things. First of all, it was the right thing to do. Second of all, they would not pay heed, but I did it anyway. And then I decided to go ahead and go public with it. So I wrote that 14 years ago, Mike. And so that's my conclusion. It's basically the same as what you were prognosticating just a moment ago.
So essentially, they've condemned billions of people to die, and knowing that some number will survive, but they can't.
80% of the people on this planet, there's over 7 billion people, 80% live within 100 miles of an ocean somewhere.
Oh my, that's true. Yeah. Well, let's talk about the effects. I mean, not only do we have the ocean water inundation, the high winds you already mentioned, fire probably in many places. I mean, what effects physically would this set off across the world as this massive pole shift takes place?
Well, in my paper, No Need for Panic, I include a photocopy of one page from a book written by Immanuel Velikovsky. And Mike, it may be one of the scariest single pages you will ever read in your life. Velikovsky was a medical doctor and amateur archaeologist. He did something no professional archaeologist had bothered to do. And if you want to compare ancient events in different continents, North America, South America, Africa, Asia, Northern Europe, you can't compare ancient events until you reconcile the calendars first. It can't be done. And that's what Velikovsky did. He reconciled the ancient calendars left behind by people in South America, Northern Europe, the Sinai Desert, and China. I'll give you a crystal clear example from the book of Isaiah. In the book of Isaiah, the Hebrew army needs, another 3 hours of daylight to win their battle. And they got it. They got the extra hours they needed to win that battle. So Velikovsky looked at the globe and he thought the following, and we know the date of that battle, by the way. It's in the Bible, if you're a Bible historian. And he said to himself, the sun didn't go down over the Sinai Peninsula when it was supposed to for a good 3 hours. Therefore, it could not have come up over China for 3 hours when it was supposed to the following day. And Mike, it did not. The Chinese had calendars. They left written records. You can imagine being a big shot in China and the sun doesn't come up for 3 days or 3 hours. You would say to the scribes, hey guys, this is pretty important. We need to make a record of this.
Yeah, that's a big deal because it implies that the Earth's rotation or something has changed in the cosmos.
In Velikovsky, in the one page that Velikovsky mentions, what he did as an amateur archaeologist, he went around to sites where, for example, caves. In these caves, this was only in the 1940s, 1950s, not all that long ago, he found the bones of animals. Now, the animals didn't just lay down and die. The bones of the animals were all jumbled together as if they were pushed by a great force. He believes it was water. I happen to concur with him. It's mainstream archaeology to dig down, and this is not exactly a secret, to dig down in Alaska through the permafrost and dig up tropical plants. Anybody can do that. You get a plane ticket to Alaska tomorrow, Mike, and do it yourself. Dig down through the permafrost and find tropical plants. When this happens, everything changes. Now, for us in North America, it's going to get warmer. We'll be farther away from the North Pole than we are now, which I guess given the alternative is probably a good thing for those of us who are alive and are not underwater, obviously. Being a warmer climate, I'll take that any day over a colder climate. It's a lot easier to survive in a warmer climate than a colder climate for obvious reasons that don't need to be stated. The 200-mile-an-hour winds would be for a better part of a day. That would knock down almost any structure above grade. The earthquakes will be massive. As I mentioned earlier in this show, the U.S. Navy says the weight of the water on the New Madrid seismic zone will trigger at least 3 9-point plus earthquakes on a New Madrid seismic zone. All that energy going north, south, and east, and not very well west. And we know that from the hundreds of earthquakes during the winter of 1811, 1812. We hear about the 3 that rang church bells in Philadelphia. We don't hear about the hundreds of other earthquakes that took place on a New Madrid seismic zone the winter of 1811, 1812. And we also know now that there was a pretty good sized comet passing Earth at that time, which may have been the trigger, may not have been, doesn't matter.
Okay, let me bring in something here that this reminded me of. This might be something you're not aware of. There is a bizarre phenomenon that happens, and this is mainstream science. It's just not well known. It's not fringe science, but during a solar eclipse, there is a cessation of gravity. And this is known as the Allais effect, ALLAIS effect. And it was observed and repeated multiple times by scientists who were doing pendulum experiments. You know how you have a large pendulum swinging and you can see the rotation of the Earth in the pendulum. Well, during a solar eclipse, the precession of the pendulum swing reversed. You might want to look into this because this seems to be, you mentioned, the sun taking 3 more hours to set. I was looking at this a couple of months ago and I found that it was repeated by multiple pendulum labs and scientists around the world, and no one could explain it. So they just kind of forgot about it.
Well, I can see the first thing that comes to mind is navigation systems dependent on magnetic compasses comes to mind. Whether that would damage buildings or harm people, I'm not quite sure how that could take place. But it would definitely, even the most modern aircraft still have magnetic compasses in them as a backup. Yeah. So it would definitely play havoc with that. It's an interesting phenomenon, Mike, but I'm not sure, given the massive earthquakes and the 200-mile-an-hour winds and rocks hitting the planet, I'm not sure how great a role that would play in something that would cause harm to people.
No, it's just, I think I bring it up because to say that there are mysterious forces that mainstream science often doesn't talk about, or that, the average person isn't aware of at all. Dynamics between heavenly bodies, our planet, the sun, perhaps Planet X, other things that are just far outside mainstream awareness. And I think about this, the bomb in Beirut, right? They were sitting, according to the official story, there was a pile of ammonium nitrate there, 2,500 tons of ammonium nitrate sitting there, and no one was aware of it. But it was ready to detonate with one spark, and it did. But aren't there other things like that in our universe that are ready to happen, to be sparked, catastrophic things that people just have zero awareness of, like a Krakatoa ready to blow?
Okay, well, I'll talk about volcanoes a little bit. I was communicating with one of my listeners the other day. She lives in Oregon, and she moved there from California from San Diego, thinking that was a safe place. And I wrote in my email the following: you do know that the Cascade Mountains aren't mountains, do you? That they're not mountains, they're dormant, soon to be coming back to life volcanoes?
That's right, they are.
Yes, they are. In fact, I was writing, my daughter lives in a far suburb of Seattle, and my son-in-law was taking me to the airport about a year ago, and I pointed him out to Mount Hood, and I said, "Young man, that thing starts smoking. You better get out of here."
No kidding.
But
I mean, Mount St. Helens was just the beginning.
Exactly, and I flew by Mount St. Helens when it was smoking. It was quite the thing to see.
Well, this time, though, I mean, future archaeologists won't miss us. I mean, they won't. Because we're leaving behind so much garbage and plastic, There's AOL CDs from all the 1990s in landfill all across the country. We're leaving behind a layer of trash that can't be missed. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, the powers that be are convinced that they're hidey holes. By the way, the government have access to the deep underground military bases. They call them hotels. I have a friend who has access to a space for him and his family. He's not going to go there. He does not trust the engineering.
Oh,
Any structure, whether it's a two-car garage or Cheyenne Mountain, is built with basic underlying engineering premises. One of those almost always is seismic resistance.
yeah.
And it's the Richter scale, and we'll talk about the Richter scale a little bit because this is important, developed by Charles F. Richter.
It's a logarithmic scale. Yeah.
It's logarithmic.
Yeah.
So when you go from 1.0 to 1.1, that's twice the strength. Now, Charles F. Richter died, I believe, in 1983 or 84. Within a year of his death, the United States Geological Survey reduced the Richter scale by one full number value. If you go to the USGS website and look up earthquakes, you'll find all earthquakes 4.9 and lower are in black. All earthquakes 5.0 and higher are in red. Red, danger, danger. Well, if we were with the original Richter scale, that would be reduced by one full number value. So the current 4.0s on the original Richter scale would be 5.0. They knew in 1984, Mike, that in the future, there would be a dramatic increase in the number and severity of these earthquakes. And the whole point of doing this was to keep people in the dark as long as possible. There's a lot of very smart people in our society that would know the difference between a 4.0 and a 5.0 if they knew, if they had the knowledge to figure that out. But they've taken that knowledge away from people.
Well, and also, if you look at, mountain ranges are formed in hours
That's right.
in reality, but they can take millions of years to slowly erode, but they're formed overnight in catastrophic events. And that, mainstream geology doesn't even yet really embrace these ideas.
Up until Charles Darwin got so popular and his theories became so widely accepted in the early part of the 19th century, catastrophic change in this planet was accepted by mainstream science as the way things were. And that all changed after Darwinian evolutionary theory became both popular and widely accepted in the scientific community. That a earthworm can become a baby given enough years. But that's obviously not true.
Right. Well, I got to ask you then, you live in the Ozarks. Do you have a cave or a hardened structure?
I have a hardened structure. Okay. It's not the best, but we hope we don't get hit by any really big rocks. We're about 950 feet above sea level. We have a spring that puts out 1 million gallons a day, which means we also have hydroelectric power 24/7.
Wow. That's amazing.
It is. It was so big it used to be on a state highway map.
1 million gallons a day?
1 million gallons a day, yes, sir.
That is, wow.
and we have a lot of springs in Missouri. It's really not even in the top 10 from Missouri. It's probably in the top 50. But yeah, so we're pretty satisfied with what we got within our financial means and our abilities. We've got a pretty good spot here all set up, ready to go.
Okay. The Ozarks are actually well known, especially in Christian communities, as a preparedness place for people to go. And I think the terrain there certainly speaks to that, but much of the country has no chance, like Florida, for example, you mentioned in a previous interview, because it's mostly, it's almost at sea level.
Alabama's mostly gone, most of Mississippi, most of Louisiana, the first 100 miles of Texas from the ocean. I do private consultations, Mike, and I went down to a place in Texas about 80 miles from the ocean there, from the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
And so my client picks me up, and his wife picked me up in her Chevy Suburban. We get to a safe haven. I open the door, and it's all sand and seashells. I look at him, and he looks at me, and I got to where his wife couldn't hear me, and I said, "You didn't tell your wife this used to be under the ocean, did you?" He says, "No." 80 miles from the ocean. It was all sand and seashells, Mike.
That's true.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Much of the Gulf area of Texas is exactly like that. Yeah.
A buddy of mine, Mike, he was on vacation out west in Arizona, where they have the mesas. There was really big, flat-topped, small mountains, a mesa. So he climbed at the top of them, and he says, "John, I was on top of this mesa yesterday. There's seashells everywhere."
Yep. Yeah, of course. I know, and history tries to delete all of that from the evidence.
That's a big of course, Mike. That's a big of course.
Well, I say that because, I've studied a lot of free-thinking
People don't know this,
scientists.
Mike. What
Yeah.
you're saying, of course, hardly anybody knows this.
I know, but we're already living in such a collapsed society that when you said that in Earth's history people couldn't do math and spoke in grunts, I thought you were talking about California's education system today. It's that bad.
Well, there's an unfortunate amount of truth to that.
There is. I mean, it doesn't even take Planet X to destroy modern society. It just takes a bunch of Democrats, you know.
We've done it to ourselves.
Yes, it's crazy. All right, next question though. Obviously, people are going to ask about timing.
That's always a big question.
That's a big question.
You know, I've been dealing with this now for 20 years. I didn't go. It was about 6 months of before I went public with this. So people want. Well, they also say, when's it going to hit? Well, Planet X has never hit Earth. It's not going to hit Earth.
Right.
It's within maybe 500,000 to 1 million miles. That's all. It's that close enough. It'll cause holy hell on this planet. But
Yes.
Here's what I've concluded, Mike. The people who are looking for a date, the people who are searching for a date, those are the ones who aren't prepared. Those are the ones who think, oh, once I get a date, then I'll leave suburban Seattle, suburban Los Angeles, suburban Chicago, suburban New York, and then I'll find a safe haven, and then my family will be okay.
Got it.
Now, the Navy veterans, and like I said, I've debriefed about 24 of them, they don't care about a date. Here's what happens. A typical military retiree is between 40 and 50 years old, young men and women. They take their 20-year retirement. They pick their 5 or 10 acres or 15 acres of heaven in the Ozarks. They start their hobby farm, a hobby farm being a farm where everything grown there, fruits, vegetables, milk, eggs, is meant for consumption on the premises, not for a business. And they start their hobby farm. They start a second career, which could be almost anything. And they don't care about a date, Mike, because they know that they're doing every day, every week, every month, as much as they can to be prepared for what's coming in the future. So a date no longer has any relevance.
It's a lifestyle.
People searching for, see, I need to repeat myself because this is so important. The people searching for a date are not prepared. That's why
true.
they need a date. They hope, they believe that once they got a date, they'll still have time to stop their pleasant, comfortable urban suburban life and then do something. That's what they hope.
Yeah, and that's when they're going to go to Costco and stock up on toilet paper too. Again,
I got 20 miles of toilet paper, Mike.
Well,
you get those commercial rolls aren't measured in sheets; they're measured in miles.
that's awesome.
It's not a flippant statement. I literally, not figuratively, I literally have 20 miles of toilet paper.
Well, okay, by the mile. That's a prepper, right there. Okay, let me ask you this. I heard a pastor talking about this subject in a few months ago, and he said that this Planet X would not be visible by normal optical telescopes. You have to use infrared telescopes because the planet's difficult to see.
That's correct, and that's what's been well known for decades.
So what about the Vatican having their telescope called Lucifer?
They actually have 3 telescopes, and one of them is named Lucifer. And
Was that designed?
You can't live in St. Louis, Missouri, my hometown, not know Catholics. But most Catholics don't know that the Catholic Church owns 3 professional grade observatories, Lucifer being one of them.
Is one of the main purposes of Lucifer to look for this Planet X?
Well, I would assume so. And
what about the idea that, if you don't mind me just asking kind of rapid fire questions here, when Planet X passes through the asteroid belt, that it would have a slingshot effect, just because of gravity, and push a lot of asteroids into or toward Earth or into Earth collision courses. Does that sound correct?
You're getting to an area of, I'm not an astronomer, I'm a homicide detective. I'll answer to the best of my ability. The 10th planet, Wormwood, Planet X, Nibiru, travels with other smaller objects. And from my limited knowledge of astronomy, the ability of a large object to attract another smaller object certainly exists.
Yes.
Going, unless you're a flat, by the way, flat Earth people know that gravity is a fiction, in case you don't know that.
That's what they say, yes.
So yes, in my limited knowledge of astronomy, I believe that a large object the size, and Planet X is believed to be 5 to 6 times the size of Earth with a far larger iron nickel core. So you get a lot more bang for your buck in terms of the magnetic attraction of gravitational attraction of other objects. So it stands to reason that it would drag other objects close by into its gravitational field there. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, gravity capture is well known in astronomy, but also there can be gravity slingshot effect or projection or acceleration via gravity, depending on the approach vector. So as it moves through the asteroid belt, it could slingshot rocks to move at a faster velocity than they are now toward Earth.
Well, that's a given also, and as Planet X goes past our sun and comes back out, and one of the things that astronomers have had difficulty with for decades is the fact that Planet X slows up and speeds down, doesn't behave as a normal asteroid or planet would moving through space. The speeding up and slowing down has been an issue that they've been dealing with for decades in terms of keeping up with it.
Well, wait a minute. That would imply some kind of thrust.
Not necessarily.
Gravity or
not necessarily. You're getting to an area that is fun to speculate on, but there's no evidence of that. And I don't know the astronomical reasons why an object like that would speed up and slow down. Obviously, when going towards the sun, it would be speeding up, and it would slow down as it went around it, and then slingshot around, to use your term, and speed up again as it left our solar system.
Well, I mean, in any elliptical orbit, the relative velocity change is different, depending on the distance from the orbiting mass. So, as it gets close to the sun, it would be faster and it would move slower much farther away. But are you talking about that it changes its speed even when it's far out? Because doesn't it go out farther than?
Apparently so, and it's kind of a side issue, quite frankly, compared to the main issue of the object itself and what we'll be doing. I
don't mean to get too geeky on you here. I'm sorry.
If we get into astronomical nuances, we'll lose our audience here.
Yeah,
people want to know, is Aunt Nellie's house in Florida going to be underwater?
Right.
People want to know, will my home survive? And that's what people want to know, Mike.
Okay, so then let's get back to that. I know we're getting close to the hour here, and this is super fascinating. But there's a normalcy bias in people out there. There's probably some people watching this who are going to say, can I still use Snapchat after this thing happens? You know what I mean? Like they're not really grasping.
My teenage daughter would probably think that, but yeah, go ahead.
Right. They're not grasping the level of the total destruction of civilization as we know it. There will be no power grid functioning. There will be no Bitcoin, by the way, because you can't use computers.
Right.
People. There's just this inability for people to grasp this concept because it's so catastrophic. They can't imagine that world.
Well, normalcy bias is a expected human trait. Another synonym would be denial, and that's expected. That's normal, unfortunately. And I've seen it firsthand, as I mentioned earlier in this show, telling my buddies about the Tet offense that was going to come and how very few of them paid heed and very few did anything about it. So that's expected and normal, Mike.
So I would imagine even if we see giant rocks in the sky and, we start to feel them hit.
Yeah, and we kind of skipped over that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Most of the 12 months, Planet X is only visible in the infrared light spectrum because of the red dust we believe is iron oxide that travels in. Some of the month of June is supposed to be visible to the naked eye. Once it gets close enough to Earth, you'll be able to see it. It may just be a bright red cloud because of the iron oxide, but you'll be able to see it. But by then, we're down to weeks, probably not months, but probably weeks before the real devastating effects are being felt.
Well, what were you mentioning? June. What was in June? Because
I don't know what it is about June, but everything that I've read from these astronomers is that it's visible in the normal light spectrum, the visible light spectrum in June, as opposed to only the infrared light spectrum.
I see.
The other 11 months.
Oh, I see. Okay, so those who are maybe tracking it with high-end telescopes, they have limited windows for certain wavelengths to make it through.
Exactly.
I see. Okay, so but even if we don't see the planet, there obviously, when the giant rocks start striking our planet, people will realize, hey, there are earthquakes. John Moore, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been fascinating.
We'll do this again soon. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Well, there you go, folks. That's the interview with John Moore, thelibertyman.com. Fascinating interview, but as you can tell, we only scratched the surface of this topic, Planet X, Nibiru, I think it's called, Wormwood, different names for it. We'll obviously ask Mr. Moore to get together with us again and go into more detail, but if you're tracking what he's saying so far, then it might not be a good idea to stay in a coastal city, let's say, anywhere in the world, because the massive wave of ocean water is going to be worldwide. It's going to hit coastal cities on every continent, South America, Africa, Asia, everywhere, because of course the oceans are all connected, and there might be giant space rocks hitting the oceans at different Atlantic and Pacific and Indian Ocean, who knows? So another reason to get prepped. There might be giant space rocks falling out of the sky, and if that doesn't happen, don't worry. Antifa will be trying to set fire to your suburb anyway, any day now. So get prepared. Check out my new downloadable 9-hour free audiobook. It's called The Global Reset Survival Guide. And you can download that for free, no tricks. You just fill out your email address, you get the download links, download the MP3 files, 9 hours of audiobook and a transcript. For those who are hearing impaired, they can read the transcript, and you can print it out and keep a hard copy. That's at globalreset.news. And again, it's completely free, gives you all my best advice on preparedness and survival for what's coming. I didn't even really think about Planet X when I was recording all of that. That's just talking about the economic collapse that's coming. The riots, the mass starvation, the food inflation, perhaps war with China, EMP attacks, grid down scenarios. Well, Planet X kind of beats all that, doesn't it? If Planet X swings by and drops some giant rocks on our planet, and Earth, if we have pole shift that John Moore was just talking about, then I guess, fiat currency is irrelevant at that point. You have no society left in which to function. You have to, drag yourself out of the rubble of the post-pole shift world and work to survive with whatever, chickens and goats that you managed to save during the 200-mile-an-hour winds. That's not going to be a fun Friday. In any case, check out the full book, the audiobook, globalreset.news is where you can get that. And thanks for watching. I'm Mike Adams, the Health Ranger, founder of Brighteon.com and the publisher of naturalnews.com. God bless you all. Thank you for watching. Share this everywhere.